audio to participate.
It's working. Is it working?
We are online. Abe, can you hear the chair?
Abe, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Then we are on.
Okay, and Mr. Chairman, just for the folks who are in attendance, you will be brought over when it is time to be sworn in, and then you will change your status from an attendee to a panelist. So when you see that, you'll need to turn on your video and your microphone so you can be sworn in. And then when your item comes up, you will be brought over for your item.
All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight is Wednesday, September the 8th. This is the meeting, the monthly meeting of the Historic Resources Preservation Board. And Secretary, could we have a roll call?
Sure. Judith Fox.
Judith Fox?
Here.
Good, she's here.
Chip Guthrie. Okay. We see you. I can't hear you, but.
No. Still can't hear you, Jeff.
Are you on your phone again? Same way? Maybe you want to rejoin. All right, Steve Pickett.
Here.
Jeff Harris.
Here.
Dr. Rinza.
Here.
And did I say Bill? Yeah.
Yes, here.
We have a full board.
Wonderful. Okay. Could we please rise and join in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
HRPB bloopers.
I think that was Chip.
All righty. Folks, staff, do we have any additions, deletions, or reorderings?
Not this evening, Mr. Chairman.
All right, we have a swearing in for our new member, Mr. Martin.
I'll read it to you, and then at the end, you just confirm what I read. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I, Ricardo Martin, will support, protect, and defend the Constitution and the government of the United States and of the state of Florida against all enemies, domestic or foreign, that I will bear true faith, loyalty, and allegiance to the same, and that I'm entitled to hold office under the Constitution and the Charter of the City of Lake Worth Beach, and that I will faithfully perform all the duties of the office of appointed member of the Historic Resources Preservation Board, of which I'm about to enter. Do you?
Yes, we do.
Thank you.
Okay, congratulations and welcome. Can I get a?
Amen.
That's
You
it.
hear that?
Going to get an approval of the minutes. Someone want to make a motion?
I move we approve the minutes.
I second that. Moved, seconded by Mr. Harris. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Right. Now we go to the swearing in of staff.
Applicants. So for all of our applicants, I'm going to change the view here. You need to turn on your video and unmute if you plan to provide testimony this evening. To make sure, I see some folks who don't have their videos on and do not have themselves unmuted. You may have to accept to rejoin as a panelist. Please unmute yourselves and turn on your video. We are waiting on Jeremy Walter and Lou Canales.
I'm here, Jeremy Walter. I have a
A second?
I have it on my computer also, just so I can see larger. I'm dialed in on the phone for the audio and video.
Any note.
Okay, so we're just waiting on Lou. If you can turn on your video, sir.
Trying to, but I don't know why it's not turning on.
Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and proceed with the swearing in. If you can't get your video turned on when it's time for your item, we'll give you some time to sort it. I think we're ready, Sherry.
Okay, please raise your right hand.
If you're on the
If you're-
video
if you're-
call, everyone down the call needs to raise their right hand.
You swear and affirm the testimony you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. If so, say yes.
Yes,
Yes.
Yes.
thank you.
All right.
Sherry, we're having a little glitch. What is the first one? Do you have an extra agenda? Yes.
Let's move on to proof of publication. I think we have that. We've shown that. There are no withdrawals or postponements. Mr. Hodges?
No, sir, not this evening.
All right. Board disclosures. If you have had any interaction with any of the applicants, please let us know now. Let's start with Steve Pickett. None. Mr. Martian?
Done.
None. I visited all of the locations, but have not had interaction with applicants. No disclosure. And Ms. Fox?
None.
Thank you very much. All righty. It looks to me like we're ready to
Me
start.
neither, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Chip. The answer is none, I assume. Correct. Sorry about that. Okay, let's move on to project number whatever, for 732 North Palm Way. You want to take it away?
I believe Abraham's going to be doing that remotely this evening.
Just gonna load up our PowerPoint here. I'm not enabled to share my screen.
Hold on 1 second, I am sorry.
Not should be able to. All right, good evening. For the record, this is Abraham Fogel, Preservation Planner for the City of Lake Worth Beach, and I'll be presenting this item for you tonight. Just as a quick recap, at the July 14 regular HRPB meeting, a COA for the additions, exterior alterations, site improvements, and a variance from the base flood elevation requirements was approved for the single-family residence at 732 North Palm Way. Although that COA did include exterior alterations and a base flood elevation for the detached garage, the HRPB separated that from the request and continued the scope of work proposed for the garage, since there were substantial changes to the massing, height, and appearance of that structure. The HRPB provided several recommendations that included a redesign and lowering the overall height of the garage. And for tonight's item, we will just be reviewing the exterior alterations and the VFE variance for that garage. So just a quick recap in these next couple of slides. The subject property is a 50 by 135 lot located on the southeast corner of North Palm Way and 8th Avenue North. And it is a single family property in the single-family residential zone district. As we covered in July, this is a masonry minimal traditional structure that was designed in 1949. And on the bottom left corner, we can see the garage, which is what we will be discussing tonight. Here's a current photo showing the garage and the alley behind. So again, tonight we will be reviewing the conversion of the existing garage into additional habitable living space to be a pool cabana and a variance from base flood elevation requirements of the Florida Building Code due to substantial improvements. So here we have the site plan that was approved in July. I've highlighted the location of the existing garage that will be converted to a pool cabana. There are no changes to the actual footprint. They are exterior alterations and a change in height. So as I mentioned, we're not seeing any site changes here. The main thing is the BFE, which we covered last meeting, but just to touch on that again, per FEMA, a substantial improvement may occur when plan improvements exceed 50% of the appraised pre-improvement value of the structure based on Palm Beach County property appraiser records. That value is $124,106,000. So if that 50% threshold, that would cap the improvements at about $62,000. And here on this slide, we have the project valuation provided by the architect, which would place the overall improvement at over $135,000. So that would constitute a substantial improvement. When that occurs, you would need to meet current base flood elevation requirements. The pending flood zone is 8E. Which would require 9 feet NAVD. The current garage sits at 4 feet, and there's an proposed improvement to the garage slab that would raise that by 4 inches. So that would bring it to 4.33 NAVD, whereas the pending flood zone puts it at 9 NAVD. Here we have a floor plan. As you can see, it's mostly an open space that includes a kitchenette and bath. The applicant has provided 2 options. So option A, and the project architect can further explain, is the preferred option where the hip roof would be changed to a gable roof. And overall, it has been lowered to match the ridge height of the other gables on the structure. The other change was a window beneath that gable end that now is a decorative vent. And overall, the rest is largely the same since July. So option B is largely the same, but we do have a hip roof design, and this is being presented since the original garage was designed with a hip roof, so this option would respect that original design. So as we covered last month, the pending flood zone requires 9 feet. After those 4 inches are added to the existing slab, it would be 4.33. So you would be providing a relief of 4.67 feet. This, per our code, that relief is available for properties that are designated in a local historic district, contributing properties that is, and this property is, so it would be eligible for this type of request. Since it is a contributing resource to the Northeast Lucerne Local Historic District. So moving on to our variance criteria, it's provided in LDR section 23.7-7G2. We did go over this criteria in July. So in our staff analysis, we contend that complying with the strict interpretation of the Florida Building Code could result in a disruption to the structure's historic appearance, raising the finished floor elevation of the converted garage an additional 4.67 feet could disrupt the foundation and wall proportions and general height of the building when comparing it to similar structures. Allowing the garage to remain below the required BFE is unlikely to increase flood heights, cause additional threats to public safety, public expense, or create a nuisance. The proposal is compliant with impermeable surface requirements and BLDRs, and when we're saying that, we're referring to the site plan as a whole, and there are pervious buffers around the property lines, which also help with drainage. The variance is likely the minimum necessary to allow for substantial improvement without having to raise the garage to meet current BFE elevation requirements or to significantly raise the beam height of the structure to accommodate higher ceilings due to an increase in floor height. So here to kind of summarize our analysis, at the top, we see the initial design and option A and B provided below. The proposal includes raising the beam height from 8 feet to 10 feet and changing the roof design from a hip roof to a forward-facing gable roof. That is the preferred design of the applicant, but an alternative design illustrating a hip roof configuration is also provided for the board's consideration. Both roof design options maintain the same overall height. The proposed alterations, while significant, are not in conflict with the architectural style, massing, and design common among minimal traditional buildings from the 1940s and 50s. The applicants have lowered the roof's midpoint height from 14 feet 3 inches to 12 feet 2 inches since the July meeting. And as I previously mentioned, and you can see on the slide, that window beneath the gable end was replaced with a decorative vent. Staff has not received any written comments associated with this application. And in conclusion, the proposed exterior alterations requested in the COA application are generally compatible with the Historic Preservation Ordinance criteria and the Historic Preservation Design Guidelines. The structure also meets the eligibility requirements for a variance from BFE requirements, and it is staff's analysis that proposed improvements would not preclude the continuation of the building's contributing designation. Therefore, staff recommends approval of the COA and variance applications with conditions. So that concludes staff's presentation. We have our conditions of approval for the COA and variance. We can go over that right now, or we can turn it over to the applicant.
I think let's ask the applicant if he has anything to add to Mr. Fogel's presentation.
You're muted, sir.
Can the applicant hear us?
Yes, he can.
I can hear you. I'm sorry, I was muted.
all right.
Yes, do you have anything to add to Mr. Fogel's presentation?
I don't have anything to add other than to reiterate the request for the gable design. I think that as we turn the corner from the front of the house, down the side street, I think the repetition of the gables offers a better massing, and really ties all of the additions and work that we're doing on the property together.
Okay, thank you very much. There seems to be no public comment on it. So does the board have any questions? Let's start with Mr. Pickett. Any questions or comments?
I just wanted to clarify, it does say in the conditions that there aren't supposed to be any kitchen facilities in there that would allow it to be an ADU, and it looks like that on the floor plan. I just want to make sure that that's the case. And overall, I mean, I think they did a good job with coming back with some good alternatives.
Yeah.
I do still prefer the hip roof, but I'm open to the gable roof. Further discussion.
Right. Mr. Harris?
I have no questions for the applicant. Honestly, I think the gable roof, the progression of the gables along that street reinforces the project. I find the hip roof to be a little bit disconcerting as a modification to the building. So I would support the gables.
Okay, Mr. Guthrie.
I'm looking at it too, and my preference would be the gable as well.
All right. Mr. Dorinzo.
I agree with my fellow board members. I like
Okay,
option A.
Ms. Fox.
I agree with the gable. Yeah, I like it. It all blends.
Okay.
Same with me. I agree with it.
And I agree too on the gable end. Well, it seems like the applicant has done everything we've asked for. Could I entertain a motion, please?
Yeah, I move to approve HRPB project number 21-00100119 and 21-01500004 with staff recommended conditions for certificate of appropriateness for exterior alterations and a variance from base flood elevation requirements of the Florida Building Code for the garage structure located at 732 North Palm Way, based upon the competent and substantial evidence in the staff report and pursuant to the City of Lake Worth Beach land development regulations and historic preservation requirements.
Motion by Mr. Harris, second by Mr. Dorinzo. Any more discussion? If not, hearing none, all in favor, aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Did you have a comment? No. Okay, let's move on to the next one. 1020 South Lakeside Drive.
So we mean, Mr. Chairman, Abraham should be loading up the presentation.
Okay.
That's Jordan's copy.
Abraham, I'll just tell you next slide when it's time to go. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, for the record, this is my name is Jordan Hodges, Senior Preservation Coordinator for the City of Lake Worth Beach, and I'll be presenting this item. This is a consideration of a completed work application for a historic preservation ad valorem tax exemption and a recommendation to City Commission for the tax exemption for the property at 1020 South Lakeside Drive. Next slide. So the property is located on the east side of South Lakeside Drive, directly north of South Palm Park. The property is zoned single family and is currently used as a single family residence. Next slide. So just a brief history on the property. The structure was designed in 1956 by architect Ames Bennett at a cost of $19,400, which was a pretty substantial permit value for that time. The architectural drawings for the building illustrate a single-story residence of masonry construction with a smooth stucco exterior finish, some cast aluminum columns, a flat white concrete tile hip roof, and aluminum awning windows. Portions of the structure are detailed also with the decorative coins in the corners. And in 1972, a bedroom was added to the rear of the building. Next slide. So these are some photos illustrating the structure in 2019. The original flat white concrete tile roof was administratively approved to be replaced with a new flat tile roof in March of 2019 under an administrative COA due to an active leak. But the applicant removed the old tile and installed a new underlayment to waterproof the roof and waited for their board approval for the addition prior to installing the new roof, which is why the roof is off in this photo. Next slide. Here's some more photos. You can see the original windows. The awning windows had bronze frames, which are a bit unusual for the period. Next slide. Okay, so at the September 11th, 2019 HRPB meeting, the property received an approval for a COA for an addition, exterior alterations, a base flood elevation variance as a result of a substantial improvement, and a pre-construction approval for a historic preservation ad valorem tax exemption. So just kind of a little rundown of what was approved. The application proposed to remove all existing bronze framed awning windows and to replace them with new impact aluminum single hung horizontal slider casement and fixed windows with bronze frames and divided light patterns to replicate the existing windows. Also, a new flat white concrete tile roof was installed or requested to be installed. Replacement of the doors with French doors, sliding doors, and solid doors. Replacement of the garage door with a new impact flush panel door, and the construction of a new 760 square foot addition, which you can see on the slide there. It's towards the top right for the existing structure. Also to install a new pool, paver deck, and walkways to the rear of the property. The applicants also undertook a full interior renovation at the time. Next slide. So these are some of the elevations. You can see the existing on the left and what was proposed to the right. Predominantly, I mean, there's not a whole lot of change here, which is good. The windows are replicating what was removed. The roof is the same as what was removed in the installation of the new garage door. Next slide. This is the pre-construction and post-construction south facade. You can see the addition to the rear of the property that was approved under the scope of the tax exemption. Next slide. Okay, so according to the Lake Worth Beach Building Division records, the rehabilitation of the property was completed under building permit 192165 with a declared valuation of $251,955. The applicant submitted the completed work application for the work certification under the tax exemption and documentation for the completed work, and we'll go through some of those photos now. This is the west elevation. As you can see, the new flush panel door, the very bright white concrete tile roof, and the new windows. Next slide. Here you can see a close-up of the front bay of single hung windows, and these were approved with a divided light pattern to kind of replicate the awnings that were removed, the 4-light pattern. Next slide. This is the south elevation fronting South Palm Park. Again, you can see a little bit of the white tile roof, the new windows, the new entry door, and exterior lighting fixtures. Next slide. This is a wider shot of that elevation, and you can see a little bit of the addition to the right side of the photo. It's got that large glazed area and then a covered patio area. Next slide. And this is a shot from that rear patio showing the addition and a bit of the new pool in South Palm Park off to your left. Next slide. So per a review of the completed work application, the approved scope of work was generally adhered to, and the completed building reflects the exterior alterations proposed by the applicant. The HRPB did include 9 conditions of approval in the COA development order and 3 conditions of approval for the tax exemption application. So we'll just go through those really quickly and point out some of the problematic areas. Number 1 was our standard at the time for glazing. Number 1 and number 2. Which state that tinted, highly reflective, etched, or leaded glass shall not be used. It does approve glass with a clear low E coating. As you saw in some of the photos, the doors and the window types are installed as approved, but the glazing was installed with a dark gray low E treatment, which is not what was directed in the conditions of approval. Also, condition number 3 is our standard condition for the divided light patterns, which is the exterior raised applied triangular muttons. As those were installed with external flat muttons. Next slide. Conditions 4 through 7 were all found to be in compliance. Those are generally standard conditions for window replacement. Mentions the garage door and the stucco texture. Next slide. Number 8 and number 9, regarding the roof and site plan measurements, site plan calculations, those were also found to be in compliance. Next slide. So these are the tax exemption conditions of approval. The project was found to be in conflict with condition number 1, which requires compliance with all conditions of approval. And as we just went through, conditions 1 through 3 were not met. Condition number 2 also requires compliance with the Secretary of Interior standards. So we'll kind of defer to the board to determine if the intent of the SOI standards were met in this application. But the application is in compliance with number 3, which was their documentation requirement. Next slide. Okay, so the project was approved and conditioned prior to the adoption of our current glazing standard, which requires a visual light transmittance of 60% or greater. The standard effectively prohibits low E treatments, which turn glazing shades of gray or green. The current glazing standard was researched and instituted due to inconsistent industry standards between manufacturers as to what constitutes a clear low E glazing. But per the applicant's Part 3 application, which was included as attachment D, low E windows were selected to protect the interior materials of the home from harsh exterior southern exposure, or I'm sorry, exposed southern, eastern, and western exposures of the home. And bronze window frames and tinted glass were selected to provide the best match for the existing windows that were tinted bronze glass with bronze frames. Per a review of those pre-construction photos, some of which are up on the screen, the original glazing does appear to have a tint application. Staff recommends that the board review the pre-construction and post-construction photos to determine if the glazing that was utilized in the replacement successfully replicates the original products. Staff reviewed the permitting documentation for the project, and a glass specification was not provided by the contractor at the time of the permit review. The work at the property did pass a window bucking inspection in April of 2020 and a window final inspection in December of 2020 by a building division representative, even though the glazing was not in compliance with the COA conditions of approval. The completed renovation has not yet received complete final inspection. That other condition regarding the mutton application, raised profile triangular muttons applied to the exterior of the glazing are generally always what is required for window replacement projects within the historic districts. But the applicants contend in their justification statement that because the original windows were awning windows with flat exterior framing, the raised triangular profiles would not be suitable as they do not successfully replicate the design and profile of the original material. Staff actually agrees with the applicant's assessment that an exterior flat profile is a suitable alternative when replicating awning windows. But staff requests that the board discuss the mutton profiles and determine if the exterior flats meet the intent of the Secretary of Interior standards. Next slide. So staff reviewed the documentation and materials provided in this application and has performed a site visit to the property. And it is staff's analysis that the work performed at the property generally follows the scope of work approved in the pre-construction application and complies with the conditions of approval included in the COA development order, with the exceptions of conditions 1 and 2, which require clear glazing or glass with a clear low E coating, and condition 3, which requires raised triangular muttons. Staff recommends that the board review the completed work application and supporting attachments to determine if the project was completed in a manner consistent with the HRPB development order and the intent of the Secretary of Interior standards. If the board moves to certify the completed work, staff recommends that the HRPB recommend approval of the historic preservation ad valorem tax exemption to the Lake Worth Beach City Commission. Alternatively, the HRPB may move to certify the majority of the completed work application, but may exclude components not deemed to be consistent with the development order or the intent of the Secretary of Interior standards. I believe that the property owner, Louis Makepeace, is here with us this evening. The board can go ahead and move on to Mr. Makepeace, or I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Let's move to Mr. Makepeace. Do you have additional comments?
Thank you very much, Board. I would like to thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight, as well as giving us the continuance. We were on the docket for July meeting. Unfortunately, we were unable to attend. We're very excited to be winding down this project. It has been quite a tour for us, a trip. But where we are now is we have our forever home here in Lake Worth Beach, and we're very excited. We're very excited with the way the house turned out. We feel that it's kept with the historic appearance and in fact improved it by removing the awning or the accordion shutters from the windows. I think that Jordan did a great job. Thank you, Jordan, for presenting our position around the exceptions of the window tint, which were selected to match the original awning windows and the framing of the glass awning windows with the flat muttons. We would appreciate that the board would approve the project and the final completion, and that we look forward to taking this to the next step, and believe that we have done everything that we could do in enlisting support from the staff, who were very helpful in making decisions if we were ever in question. For example, with the front door and the garage door, we worked with Jordan to get those items approved as we move forward with the renovation. We believe that the finished project is adhering to the original style of the home, has significantly improved the appearance of the home, as I mentioned, removing the accordion hurricane windows, providing by the impact windows, and has provided an overall improved appearance of the South Palm Park Historic District. And we look forward to the next steps of taking the project to the city or to the county and the state for the ad valorem tax exemption process.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I understand there are no comments from the public. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
So let's go to the board members and questions for the owner from board members. Mr. Guthrie, do you want to start?
The presentation shows on the finished product over there very much resembles what I recall as being the type of glass that was there. We've had many opportunities to be in that park, and if anybody's familiar with the house, if the windows were not tinted a little bit, it would basically have a fishbowl effect. And I recall that as I recall, those windows have always had a tint to them, so I thought that this was just a replacement of pretty much what they had there, and I don't see it as a detriment to the neighborhood or the historic district at all. And I would vote to approve the application.
Thank you. Mr. Harris?
Just a quick question for Jordan. Jordan, you were saying initially that this house had originally bronze windows, or did it always have these jalousies?
So these, the awning windows, the jalousie or awnings, whatever you prefer to call them, up at the top, the originals,
Yeah.
those were original to the building. So they had bronze frames and kind of that bronze.
Okay,
glass.
all right, I see. Okay, all right. And then also, you mentioned that initially you think that the windows were tinted in those frames, right?
I don't particularly remember that being on site, but in every photo that I have of the property before the construction, they're tinted.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah, those are the only questions I have.
Mr. Dorenzo?
I'm good, sir.
You're good. Ms. Fox? Ms. Fox?
Yeah, I had to unmute. What we're basically talking about here then is not adding tinting. We're talking more about replacing what was there with the existing color like we did up on North Palmway, where they had the darker windows and they just replaced them?
That's a question for,
That's kind of where I think we are. I mean, you can tell that the original glazing had a tint to it. This was at a time, like I kind of mentioned earlier, in 2019, where our glazing standard was a little bit vague. We didn't have a VLT measurement. We just kind of said, clear low E. But as we discussed in our research, there's a lot of clear low E. A lot of clear low E that ventures into gray, ventures into green. So it does look here that they are getting close to replicating what was there originally. And that maybe should have been taken into account in the original conditions of approval.
Okay, it's just, this is such a touchy subject. I wanted to get that clear.
Yeah, I mean, if we move to certify the work, I think, stating a finding that because it replicates what was there originally, would be wise.
Okay.
And just to explain, I just touched back with Jordan on it. This would probably need an administrative, you all made the findings that this was consistent. It would need an administrative COA to reflect the glass and the button configuration to just clean up the file.
And we could issue a revision administratively for that.
I'm going to go next before a couple of others and say that I do have a problem with it. Ames Bennett in 1956 had no ability to put in tinted glass. Also, if you look at the before front elevation, the window next to the garage apparently does not have tint on it, which makes me think that the tinting on all the rest of the glass was applied, probably with a film at some time in the past. But the original building, and to which we are duty bound to look, does not have tinted glass. And by approving this, we are giving this owner, and he did a wonderful job. I noticed it gets the House of the Month award, a beautiful job. But we are going to be giving him a 10-year free ride on, what is it, $250,000 or so of improvements. And that's a lot of money for the city. And for that kind of money, I think we should be a little more rigid in our standards. I may be outvoted here, but I think maybe there's another way. You had mentioned there is a possibility of approving it except for that. And if so, what does that do to his tax deferral?
So it would require a little bit of collaboration between us as staff and the county tax collector. When we hand off the application, it would essentially be removing the cost of the windows or the cost of the improvement for the windows in the scope of the tax exemption. They would still get the tax exemption for the addition, the roof, the interior improvements, all, basically everything aside from the increase in cost as a result of the windows.
I would be in favor of that. It's a meeting them halfway, but it is acknowledging that this issue of people not asking permission, but coming back asking for exoneration afterward, that we go through with every last project that we get. It's got to stop somewhere.
How did they get approved once they weren't, how did they get to this point?
So that was so the building division representatives are typically the only people that do inspections. We don't have a big enough staff in planning and zoning and historic to go out and inspect properties.
Okay.
So they had a bucking, an in-progress inspection, and then a final window inspection. When that occurs, the building representative is supposed to look at, of course, the building plans, but if it's in a historic district, they should be looking at the COA letter as well, to make sure that those are in compliance as well. It looks like that didn't happen.
Fell through the cracks.
It's human because it's human error.
Okay.
So
Was it human error?
It's been addressed with the individual, and additional training has been provided for them to make sure that they understand that there are those areas, and it's not our staff is, and inspectors are generally very good about looking.
Yes, they are.
It just, on an occasion, there is a huge amount of volume.
Human error, no problem.
It happens.
Mr. Pickett, your comments?
I understand staff's position as far as the fact that it does seem that the windows are matching, but I was also curious about being able to separate that line item out because it just doesn't seem to be keeping, it is such a contentious issue. It's something that we're trying to make to the historic district. So I think that I would want to explore that.
Ms. Fox, you had something more to add?
Well, I don't know. It just seems like one of those things that we're told to do something, we don't do it. So do you, as opposed to following it, you go for forgiveness? I mean, I don't know,
Mr. Martin?
My question would be, previously, how the board has voted on situations like this, just to be consistent in how we deal with each person that comes to us. And have we in the past do it proportionally, where we say, okay, we take out of the exemption request.
This would be the first time that this is happening in a tax exemption application. Since the board instituted the specific glazing standard, not the one in 2019, but the specific glazing standard where we measure the visual light transmittance, the board's been incredibly consistent about towing that line, except for one project, but that project was built in the early 90s that originally utilized a tinted glass, and they were allowed to go back with a tinted glass. This one is a little bit different. Like Mr. Chairman said, it was built in the 50s. All I have to go off of is my photographs. So it's a little bit of a different situation.
Can I ask Jordan a question?
Yes.
Do we have a visual light transmittance of the glass that was installed?
Of the glass that was installed,
From the permit documentation, because it was not provided, so.
I don't believe so. I believe it just said gray.
Yeah.
So it possibly meets the VLT that has been approved by the commission. It's possible that it meets that now.
The commission did lower the visual light transmittance threshold from 70% to 60%. We're still in the process of kind of looking what 60% looks like for a lot of different manufacturers. I couldn't really make that judgment, Chip.
It certainly does not appear to me. There's one photo with an open window and a white shutter behind it, which gives a good example of the darkness of the tint. Incidentally, just as an aside, the flat mullions does not bother me at all, specifically because we permitted single hung windows, and you basically can't do a single hung window with a triangular button. So more comments.
I have another question.
Yeah, please.
If you said this was the first time we consider a proportional. Normally, when people come to the board, is either for 100% of the tax and they've met all the conditions, or they don't.
Yeah, so in the past, when we've approved tax exemptions, we really haven't run into issues, at least in my period here, where they aren't in compliance with certain conditions. So 100% of the improvement value has been passed on the tax exemption. So in this case, if the board did decide to remove the scope of the windows from the tax exemption, we would just have to coordinate with the county.
Does that mean that in the future, somebody can come to the board and say, okay, you've granted a proportional exemption regarding windows, but I want a proportional exemption, let's suppose, regarding the roof type of tile.
Well, I think we need to back this up for you because when they come in with a scope with a proposal for the tax exemption, that comes to you with a scope of work and everything they're proposing under that. So the whole thing, anything, all exterior improvements have a COA, so they have to meet the standards for any exterior.
Mhm.
So the whole package comes forward with a scope of work.
It's the pre-construction application.
Right,
And
so
then
you-
this is the post-construction certification.
So it's kind of like an agreement, right? The board and the applicant say, okay, this is what we're doing, this is what we're approving, now you go out and prove it. This is the
Mhm.
second meeting. So they've already had the discussion, they've agreed to the conditions of approval, they went out, did it. There are a few that didn't quite get done the way that what was discussed, it's a little different. So you just have to decide, because they didn't do it like you all said, are you okay with that? Or do
Okay.
you want to take that piece out? This is,
Okay.
and I think that's where you're missing, this is meeting two,
Okay.
so.
Now, the top left photo shows the window adjacent to the garage door, which appears to have no tint.
Can we do like Vanna White?
But is that only one window or all the other windows were tinted?
Excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt, but may I make a comment?
Yes, please.
That picture is a poor picture because it looks like the window has no tint because of the sun reflecting on it. It is the same as all of the other windows that were taken out of the home. Also, I'm not a window expert, but when the windows were taken out and the glass was broken, there was no film on either side of the glass. It was tinted through and through. I don't know anything about the availability of tinted glass in 1956 when the home was built, but I can only tell you that the glass that was there was tinted, and we did our best to meet the aesthetic value of the windows with tinting and coloration. So there was no, I'm being as honest as possible. There was no intention to do something different than what was approved and then come back and ask for forgiveness. We, in all good faith, did a renovation that was meeting the requirements, meeting the historic look of the home, increasing the value of the neighborhood and the structure itself while keeping that historic look. So I just would like to make that point in clarification about that garage window beside the garage door. It is tinted, it's just a bad picture.
And I think this
Thank
is
you.
where the discussion came, where we originally arrived at, we need a BLT, right? Because different people took away from a discussion of what clear was and what that meant. And so if you recall, we had lots of cases where they said, well, I thought this meant, and I thought this meant, and then we were like, okay, well, let's define it. And then that's why we went through that whole, process of defining it, because everybody had a different take on what it was. And then now we have the current standard that we have.
Okay.
Okay, additional comments or thoughts from Mr. Pickett?
Not to muddy the waters much more, but since the windows appear to have been tinted for quite some time, I don't know, is there documentation that these are the original windows, or we don't know?
So I did go through the permit file. I had the same thought. I didn't find anything that scheduled the window or that had the windows being replaced at any point in time.
They have, even if they weren't original, they have contributed to the historic nature of that area.
Abe, if you flip back to the early architectural drawings, they are kind of in the same configurations at least. So if they were replaced, they replaced them close to true to form.
Right. No,
It's a tricky one.
Comments from Ms. Fox or Mr. Guthrie?
Nothing.
Nothing. Mr. Guthrie?
He left.
No.
Okay. All right, well, hearing no more comments, can I hear a motion?
I'll move to approve it. But 100%, we're not talking a proportional, we're talking now 100%, right?
It's whatever you
That would
make
be
the
up to
motion.
you.
It's been represented that the windows all were the same. And they've simply replaced. Okay. All right, we're
We
going,
want to read.
okay, so what do? I read it?
Yeah, it's always-
Okay, I see it. I move to approve HRPB project 19-001-00107 for a completed work application for a historic preservation ad valorem tax exemption for the property located at 1020 South Lakeside Drive, based upon the competent substantial evidence in the staff report and pursuant to the City of Lake Worth Beach land development regulations and historic preservation requirements. Further, I move to recommend to the Lake Worth Beach City Commission this application and its approval.
And just for clarification, Mr. Martin, I'm assuming you're making this motion because you're recommending that the replacement windows are consistent with the Secretary of Interior standards because they replicate for windows. Is that correct? Or no?
Yes, that's correct.
I second that.
Seconded by
Mr. Guthrie.
Mr. Guthrie. Any additional comments? If not, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
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 We have 1, 2, 3, 4 yes, 3 no.
Judy.
Judy,
Judy Dorinzo Feldkamp, no. Okay, Guthrie is a yes.
Yes, I am.
Motion passes then.
did you say yes?
I did say yes. I just want to make it clear that this is because it's a replacement and that we don't want to slide any on what our fitting standards are.
Well, I think it's hard, it's a hard case because I think Mr. McKee's, because there is I want to encourage people to not follow through with the direction based on the scope of work, because it's an agreement, right? I mean, like they're agreeing to do this and in return get tax money, reduce the tax burden. So it's a big deal, the tax.
It is. It's a lot of money that the city is forfeiting by making this agreement.
Right.
Well, the vote was 4-3. The motion passes. And thank you, Mr. Makepeace. Let's move on to the next project. Our next project is 307 North L Street.
One moment, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to bring over the applicant. Just have the applicant remain muted until staff has presented.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, for the record, this is Jordan Hodges. I'll be presenting this item tonight. This is a consideration of a certificate of appropriateness for the construction of 4 new, approximately 1,489 square foot single-family structures on lots 27, 28, and 29, and 30 of block 90 at the address 307 North L Street. Next slide. So the property owner, which is Sundream Development LLC, represented by project architect Giorgio Antoniazzi, is requesting approval for the construction of 4 new single-family residences. The subject property consists of 4 25-foot wide platted lots of record on a parcel that currently measures 100 by 135. The parcel is located in the low-density multifamily zoning district and retains a future land use designation of medium-density residential. Next slide. The 4 lots located at 307 North L Street were developed, like I said, as one 100 by 135 parcel. Previous slide. Never mind, stay right there. Excuse me, were developed as 100 by 135 parcel in 1925 with a single-story, single-family residence and detached garage. The detached garage was demolished in 1976, followed by the residence in 1990, and the parcel has remained vacant and unapproved since the demolitions. In July of this year, the applicants or the property owner did submit a zoning verification letter requesting the subdivision of the lot back into its 4 original platted lots of record. That was approved by city staff. The applicant has applied for new parcel control numbers for all 4 lots from the property appraiser's office. They've yet to receive those, but that is in the works. After they receive new parcel control numbers, they will have to apply for new city addressing as well. But this is the current lot as it sits today. There are some mature trees on the parcel, but it does remain unimproved and unoccupied. Next slide. There is a multifamily property to the south of the subject site. This is it. This is, I believe, 301 North L Street. Next slide. And then north of the subject property, there's a single family structure and a detached with a detached accessory dwelling unit. Next slide. Okay, so this is the proposed site plan. And again, the existing parcel is going to be subdivided back into its original platted lots of record. So these parcels will be developed independent of one another. The proposal features 2 site plan options that are depicted as site plan A and site plan B, which may be utilized interchangeably amongst the 4 parcels depending on the development objective for each site. The front yards and structure footprints for the parcels are identical in both site plan options, but the rear yards do change. One option provides 2 off-street perpendicular gravel parking stalls and a paver patio, and the other plan features a 10 by 16 swimming pool and a single parallel spot off of the alley. Do remind you that single family developments on lots that are less than 50 feet wide only require 1 parking stall. So any or either of the site plan options are compliant. There is a slight impermeable surface coverage issue on site plan B, which has been addressed in a condition of approval, but otherwise all development standards for the parcels are met. Next slide. Here is a coverage diagram for the 2 site plan options. A is at the bottom, B is at the top. Option A again features the 2 off-street parking spots on the gravel parking area. It utilizes a paver apron, paver patio, and to the rear of the parcel. And then option B has the perpendicular or has the parallel spot, a planting strip, and then a pool in the rear yard. Next slide. This is an axonometric view showing the configuration of the structures. Also shows the fenestration pattern on the north and east facades and the arrangement of the front yards. As you can see, there's a line of fencing along North L Street, and then a pretty wide paver walkway that takes you from the public sidewalk to the entry door. Next slide. Here's a rear view showing the fenestration on the south and rear sides, along with the rear site plan configurations. You can also see that the mechanical equipment is located to the rear of the properties, which is where code specifies that it should be. Next slide. Landscape plan was also provided in the application, which will go through final review at permitting. A cursory review by the city's horticulturalist indicated that the proposed plans were meeting the minimum requirements. A tree survey and disposition plan will be required at permitting. All trees that will be removed must be replaced on site or mitigated per code requirements. Next slide. Here you can see the interior plans. Again, these are going to be identical for all 4 buildings. It's kind of a shotgun layout with an office bedroom at the front, a flex bathroom, laundry off the hall, and then a master, and then a common great room, dining room, and kitchen. The living area to the rear does have large sliding glass doors to access the rear yard. The project architect has established a regularized fenestration pattern around the building. You can see those openings clouded. Included here are some corner glazing on both corner windows on both corners of the front facade, which is a signature element of Art Deco and streamlined modern architecture, and we'll hit on that in just a moment. Next slide. These are the proposed west and east elevations. The buildings are pretty low, with the top of the gable at approximately 17 feet. The rear west facade features a 4-part slider, which does take up most of the facade. And then the front east elevation features those corner casement windows and fixed windows, an eyebrow over the recessed entryway, some stacked horizontal wood banding. You'll notice though that the fascia of the gable roofline is hidden behind the wall, but it does stick out on the sides where the overhangs are. Next slide. These are the proposed side elevations. Again, the design utilizes vertically oriented casement and fixed glass windows at regular intervals and generally avoids long expanses of blank facade. The south elevation uses some substantial floor-to-ceiling windows to allow light into the hallway, but it does use some blind recesses to create a regular pattern. You can see that indicated as the stucco reveals the faux windows. Next slide. This is the streetscape elevation at the top, which is a great tool to use to determine your overall height, massing, and spatial compatibility. The structures are generally consistent with other single-story buildings with gable roof lines on the street, height-wise. Below is a rendering provided by the architect. You can see the wood slat detailing around the doors and the configuration of the roof lines. Also pictured here are the fencing, gates, and landscaping. You can see that the horizontal wood slat detailing is carried over onto a sidewall next to the entry gate for each property. Also evident is all the finishes. So it's a smooth stucco exterior, white window frames, full view glazing, and again, that wood detailing and asphalt shingle roofs. Next slide. So the historic preservation analysis is provided in your staff reports on pages 6 to 11. Staff has 2 primary areas of concern highlighted in the analysis, which is the execution of the massing in regards to the architectural type of the building and the general repetition of 4 identical buildings. The project is designed in a contemporary streamlined modern style. And this style has its own chapter in the design guidelines. But per the design guidelines, the style was generally 1 or 2 stories, utilized smooth stucco walls with rounded corners, horizontal detailing. Windows were generally porthole, casement, and fixed pane, but some windows wrapped the corners of the building. The buildings generally sit on raised masonry or slab foundations and utilized flat roofs almost exclusively. Next slide. So the current proposal features many of the design traits associated with streamlined modern architecture, including the corner fixed encasement windows, the horizontal eyebrow, and the channel detailing around the entryway. Staff's primary concerns come from the gable roof line, which is atypical for the style, as flat roofs are most compatible. The building's prominent gable roof line is most commonly associated with the city's collection of 1920s frame vernacular cottages, which feature wood clapboard siding, vertically oriented windows, and slender rectilinear plans. The design guidelines discourage the mixing of architectural styles or architectural elements from different styles. And it states that the best approach is to choose one style of architecture and to design a structure that utilizes the common characteristics, proportions, and materials of that style. Next slide. Now the city has a variety of streamlined, modern, and deco-influenced architecture that exclusively utilize flat roofs with short parapets. This is an example in the 900 block of North J Street. The building shares, again, many of the same characteristics, including the stucco exterior, projecting eyebrows, and corner windows. This building does feature a flat roof with a slightly angled or tapered parapet. Next slide. So to keep the architectural style consistent and true to form, staff is recommending that the proposal utilize a flat roof with a short parapet. You can see the staff edited image to the right on your screens, illustrating what that could look like. This is shown with a slightly tapered parapet, which is similar to the building on North J Street that we just saw. Next slide. In addition, the cities has site design qualitative standards, which are provided in section 23.2-31 of the LDRs. And the intent of the standards is to minimize negative impacts of development on neighbors by establishing qualitative design requirements. Section D5 states that look-alike buildings shall not be allowed unless, in the opinion of the board, there is sufficient separation to preserve the aesthetic character of the present or evolving neighborhood. This is not to be construed to prohibit the duplication of floor plans and exterior treatment in a planned development, etc. But this requirement involves the construction of 4 identical single-family residences that are not part of a planned development application. And staff has concerns that the repetition of 4 identical buildings will detract from the varied and diverse development patterns of the streetscape and surrounding historic district. While structures from similar architectural styles share similar design elements, it is rare that independent neighboring structures be identical. Development in Lake Worth's historic districts are eclectic and diverse and create a wide-ranging architectural environment. Staff contends that the construction of 4 identical structures is not in keeping with the surrounding built environment. Next slide. As such, staff is recommending denial of the application as the roof design is inconsistent with the design guidelines criteria on streamlined modern architecture and new construction. Additionally, as just covered in the site design qualitative standards, the repetition of 4 identical buildings is inconsistent with the development patterns of the neighborhood. The item may be continued at the board's discretion to facilitate a redesign of 4 unique residences that are consistent with the development patterns of the surrounding district. Should the board consider approving the request, we have made the recommendation that the roof lines be altered to flat roofs with short parapets. And we've added additional conditions of approval to increase visual compatibility. We can go through those conditions now, or we can go ahead and turn it over to the architect. I believe Mr. Antoniazzi is here with us this evening.
Let's turn it over to the architect and the applicant. Do you have
Giorgio Antoniazzi here. I believe the owners are here with us as well. They would like to say a few words. I don't know if their mic is on or not.
Yes, I think it is.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to say just a few really quick words before I hand it off to Giorgio. My name is Lori Principe. This is my partner, Jeff Mercier. We're the developers and owners of 307 NL, the project that we're talking about today. We're very excited about this project. We love Lake Worth Beach. For those of you that don't know us, we are the developers of the One Luxury Condominiums, which is a beautiful 14 resident building on the corner of Lake and South Palmway with really nice commercial on the bottom. And we're also currently developing and building Alora, which is right across the street from the One. So we also are very invested in multifamilies in the area. So we love this city and we're really excited to tap into a new niche market of single family homes. So we're, thank you for your time and we hope that you consider our proposal tonight. Giorgio.
Okay, I'm Giorgio Antoniazzi. I am the architect for Sudream Development, the subject proposal that we're reviewing right now. I guess I'd like to just talk about first the story of this lot. As you know, it's been vacant since the 90s. We've looked at many different projects for this property. We've considered 6 townhouses side by side. We've considered, you guys can hear me, yeah. We've considered a multifamily project. We've considered perhaps just 2 homes on here. But we're always trying to find what is the best thing for Lake Worth, what is unique about Lake Worth, and showcase that. And to us, especially on this street, if you can go back to the zoning plan, you can see that the parcels, especially along L Street, are divided into 25-foot parcels, something that's going away in this city. They're unique parcels, they're unique properties. Now with the small home movement that's happening throughout the country and property prices going up, suddenly we see an opportunity to develop on 25-foot lots. And I found this a very exciting challenge and something that would only improve the streetscape of North L Street. If you see here, we have quite a few 25-foot or not full lots right in front of us. If you drive south, there are almost 3/4 of that block. We have 25-foot parcels there that are home. So we feel, and when we realized this, we thought this would be the best option for this property. I mean, how cool to have 4 new houses all sitting on a 25-foot lot. Seeing what Sundream Development has developed thus far in the city, sort of modern, always sticking to a modern architecture, we developed a modern design. However, because of the shape, 25-foot wide house, we felt that the flat parapet was too reminiscent of a more, utilitarian structure, and wanted to bring a little bit more decoration, a little bit more flamboyancy to this design. And we came up with a gable with no intent of ever imitating a vernacular architecture of the street. When I see this, I see a modern house. I do not see a wood vernacular house. And in no way are we intending to imitate or mix styles when it comes to this design right here. Yes, perhaps we can do things to improve it, and I think most of the conditions here are we're ready to agree upon. I think even perhaps those eaves becoming a little bit shorter to increase the streamlinedness of the building, instead of having them extend past the building like they're shown here, would increase the modern style. Modern architecture is a utilitarian sort of architecture, and this is just the best way to build a roof at this location. And actually having that parapet extend and hide the gable is exactly what would not be done in a wood cottage house. In terms of the repetition, I drive around and I see buildings that are very similar, as Jordan described. However, with certain differences. There are 2 ranch-style homes at the end of this same street that I could almost bet were exactly the same when they were built. However, over 50 years and over 100 years for some of these wood houses, they've been modified, just like these would. Just like perhaps an owner, a month from buying one of these may change them. And I feel almost, I just don't know if I agree that creating artificially, a bunch of different styles on these lots would be the best thing. I think it's kind of charming to have 4 houses that are all the same there, and at the same time blending in their width with that street. We're sort of reinforcing a typology that's going away in the city. And that would be my reason. I think we have design guidelines in the city, and I think they're very well done. I really hate coming here without the approval of staff, because having worked in the city for close to 10 years now and working all over South Florida, I think this is one of the most professional municipalities we have, and they do such a great job in these presentations. However, I do consider these guidelines, and I do think that what we're doing here is not detrimental to the neighborhood. I think it's part of the evolution of Lake Worth, and it's not something, and we're not developing something that's covering half a block or a full block. We're talking about 100 feet. That's 2 houses So in reality, although, maybe when you see these 4 houses, it seems like a large span. When you walk past here, you're likely not even going to notice or think that there are 4 different houses. I don't know if that kind of concludes my thoughts on the project. I think unless the board has any initial comments, I'd love to hear them. We can go down the list of conditions and perhaps discuss them.
Okay, well, thank you for your presentation. Are there any public comments?
Yes, we do have, I believe it's 6 or 7 public comments.
And they should be read into the record.
And I can do that for you if you give me 1 moment here. I've included, I think each of you have a set of copies of them.
Yes. Have copies, plus they were emailed to us this afternoon.
Yes, yes. So the first one comes from Diane Scoglin. Says, please be advised as a formal request to have my comments listed read into the record. Along with I'm Diana Scoglin, along with Michael Starr, and we own and live at the property 318 North L Street. We have serious concerns regarding the construction of 4 single-family home units on the property 307 North L. For the following reasons. 1, there are many large trees located on the property, of which 3 are mango trees. If they are removed for the construction, then a large swath of canopy is being removed from our city. What is the plan to replace that loss? There are other properties located within a 1-block radius that are also being considered for development there, and they as well contain large mature mango trees. How do you address the concern of the depopulation of the neighborhood of mango trees, which is in fact the namesake of the neighborhood called Mango Groves? In addition, the city has had a festival in honor of these trees and fruit called Mango Fest. And the NAPC is researching on hosting that event in 2022. The hypocrisy is evident. To accommodate 4 single-family homes, the parking situation needs careful consideration to avoid a calamity of the number of cars outweighing the availability of space. Furthermore, if these single-family homes are allowed to operate as short-term rentals, then the situation's negative impact on the parking and trash collection becomes even more than quadrupled. In conclusion, it's virtually impossible to stop an avalanche once it has started, so please consider carefully how you mitigate the negative impacts of the development on Lake Worth Beach and Mango Groves. Okay, so the second one is a little bit, the second one's a little bit longer, but we'll go through really quick. I think this is the Peter Meyerhofer, 318 North Page Street. And his comment was, we support all historically accurate and sensible development in Lake Worth Beach. This development proposed does not appear historically accurate or particularly sensible. 2, development is not in keeping with the historic fabric of the community, not resident friendly, and not visually appealing. Buildings have the appearance of World War II barracks, not consistent with Lake Worth Beach. No architectural adornments from Art Deco to Mission style to Old Florida style. Faux stucco and plate glass possess no historic flavor. Historically, the gross floor plate of the homes in the USA range generally 50% living space and 50% bed and bath. The proposed residences are 25% living and 75% bed bath space. They appear designed as flop houses or lightly regulated home sharing businesses that let almost anyone list accommodations and rent, Airbnb. Resident friendly and historically normal family could not live in this planned development. The area ways between the residents will be a chore to maintain. There's no space designed for maintenance items such as vegetation, cleaning equipment, no space for bicycles, beach chairs, or kids' toys, no way to move trash and recycling cans from rear to front, essentially no outside family space at all. Cars parked bumper to bumper on every street is not in keeping with the historic fabric of the city. All street parking must be provided for 307. The planned alley parking is not sufficient. 3 bedrooms and 3 baths and 4 residences equals 12 cars. Parking is provided for 6 vehicles. North L is already congested with parked cars and exacerbated by speeding vehicles. Green space will now be affected and reduced on the block
with a developer-sponsored, dedicated, and visible green area in keeping with the history of our own town would be a welcome addition to the plan at 307 North L. The concept drawings list pervious and impervious landscapes, hardscapes, I'm sorry. Stormwater collection, retention, and percolation below would be welcome environmental feature that historically happens with green space. Not much green space is planned in the concepts. Intense outdoor electrical lighting fixtures like mercury, halide, or LED lamps, flamethrowers are not in keeping with the historic appearance. Exterior lighting fixtures shall be dark sky fixtures as not to add to the light pollution in South Florida. Proposed residences must perpetually remain historically accurate residents. Single-family developments, home sharing, or multifamily life in a proposed residence is not in keeping with historic lake work. The concept drawings as submitted are not remotely in keeping with the historic fabric of North Lucerne as submitted. They are and a historic abomination and should be rejected in whole. We recommend a designer that knows the historic flavor of old Florida be engaged and lead the design effort. Okay, the next one comes from Drew Martin, 1015 North M Street. This lot has a number of significant trees and vegetation that are holding carbon, and if we cut it down, it will be released into the atmosphere. This could ultimately harm the climate in our city. Building on lots should preserve as much landscaping as possible. The architecture and design are incompatible with the neighborhood design. Staff has recommended against the project. And this is from Lawrence Reese. Neighborhood context, the structure feels remarkably out of place. As compared to the character of the Lake Worth community, it seems as though the developers are trying to bring a modern, minimalist Miami to this community without recognizing the character that already exists here. It may be authentic to Miami, but certainly doesn't feel like Lake Worth. Floridians do a lot of outdoor living. Do you see a screened porch or a place to have a garden? Development density. The patterning of this development seems to differ greatly from the immediate neighborhood. The approximately 80-foot long shotgun style home is much different from the typical cottage style homes in the surrounding area. Lake Worth Beach is very much a carriage house community with shorter homes and detached rear yard structures. This does nothing to respect that. Site development. What about the amount of impervious surfaces that seem to be present? Seems excessive, especially in a community subject to excessive rainfall events. This could have a significant impact to stormwater management. Left little to no room for replacement. Trees necessitated by removing very large trees that are on this site. This lack of landscaping and trees also seems very concerning. Architectural character. The 4 proposed homes are exactly the same shape, same color, same scale, and all white, which is also out of character to the existing Lake Worth community. Current neighborhoods offer diversity in color, patterning, and shape. You likely will not find 2 homes in the same block looking the same, leveling 4 in a row. Proposed homes' roof slopes are far too steep as compared to the scale of all other existing 1-story homes. Having a steeper slope also adds to a feeling of higher density. No gutters, downspouts. How are they handling rainwater? Thanks for your attention to these issues. And my opinion. I believe that was it.
Okay, thank you very much, Secretary. Does city staff have any questions for the applicant?
No, we're good.
Okay, then let's go over to board members. Questions for the applicant. Start with Mr. Harris.
I'm looking at this and I have very mixed feelings about the project. While I really don't have a problem with creating essentially a new style project, a new style of house for the project, I do have a problem with the fact that this is such a relentless development. The same units over and over and over again. And all the units, for whatever marketing or development reasons, have been, the entire piece of property has been re-subdivided or platted to its old original form. And yet the entire lot is filled up with the house, each of the houses. So I have some way beyond the style list. My fundamental problem with this is the site plan in general for the project. If you're going for a high density, why don't you look at something that gives the owners of the property more exterior space? For example, a 2-story unit, or somehow work out a situation where there's a central courtyard or some sort of private exterior space for the owners. The option of the parking option to me is confusing too. I mean, it just doesn't, this part of the project to me doesn't seem well designed at all. That's all I can say. It's just really what it is.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Mr. Guthrie.
The depiction that I'm looking at that's on the screen now, somebody mentioned World War II barracks. I looking at that because all of them are the exact same, that does take on that appearance. The fact that we're going from a 100-foot lot that used to have a single family home and a garage on it back when it was designed, that in itself breaks up the neighborhood a little bit, because yes, they are correct. They have 25-foot lots. They've got some 50-foot lots. They've got some, looks like other size lots on there. In the past, this board has reviewed projects like this when you're looking at a long, narrow building with no cutouts, there's no staggering of the buildings. There's no anything. It really does. In looking at this particular project, you can understand why the city has the actual prohibition against doing something like this, because it's just the look of them. It becomes something similar to what you'd find in a apartment rental complex where every single house is the same colors, same everything. I don't necessarily care for the front gable ends, because there's no detail, there's no vent or even a false vent look to it. And considering that these developers have done some very well, the one is what I'd be hanging my hat on, and the fact that it looks different, it is modern in style, and it looks very good. And the project that they're taking on across the street is going to fit in well. I'm not against going with a modern style in the historic neighborhood, because we've been told many times that we can do that. We actually approved a project at the corner of 6th Avenue and J Street, I believe it is, that is it's very extremely modern. And look, and I would recommend that the developer research something similar to that if you wanted to have something that's going to stand out in the neighborhood and make a statement that we could do something much better than what this is. I think the parking is going to be a problem. They also, in the presentation that Jordan gave, I believe he said that there's gravel, and I didn't see any gravel to speak of. All I saw was paved parking. Oh, that's it right there. The clouded area, that's going to be gravel. Yeah, it seems like we're building all four of these to the absolute maximum that you can fit on that property, and just barely stay in the requirements. It doesn't do anything for me, and the fact that you're going to have the parking it's going to be a problem. I have a problem with the whole project. I'm interested in hearing what other board members have to say. I'm done.
Thank you, Mr. Guthrie. Judy Fox.
No, I agree with Chip. They kind of remind me of Stalag 19. They're just sterile. They don't fit in with my idea of Lake Worth. They don't fit in with the Secretary of Interior's idea of design. I just see a lot of problems. Chip said parking. I'm not even thinking of that. And to me, it just reminds me of an old song I've made out of ticky tacky, and they all look just the same. That's my problem.
Mr. Dorinzo.
Mr. Hodges, can you bring up the front facade photo?
Mr. Vogel's controlling that.
Oh,
perfect.
Thank you. No, the one in color that shows them.
The rendering.
Yeah. I think that looks kind of cool. And I'm all for building on these 25-foot lots, bringing that 100 back to the 25, because that's how the center of our city was. It's an eclectic historic district that we've allowed a lot of little projects, especially on K, that neighborhood right there, K and L. The young guy that ended up knocking the house down, that put that really cool one, he's in their block. You have townhouses up 2 blocks. It is an eclectic block in many ways. Dealing with the little houses all the time, every day, trash cans, especially our big trash cans, the big green one and the big black one, the bicycles and all of that. That to me is going to be an issue in between the houses, dragging them out to the street. I could maybe staggering it, or here's an opportunity to, you guys did an awesome, we love your project. One of our best ones built in the city in many years. I just think there's a way to take this up one more notch, my opinion. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Martin.
Well, I tend to agree with most of the items mentioned. I just wanted to ask staff a question. When you have the 25-foot lots, what has been, I've been driving around and I don't see those elongated, huge structures unless they were built more recently, scattered maybe in other neighborhoods, but I haven't seen them around this neighborhood. How big is typically the square foot of a home on a 25-foot lot?
We don't have a maximum regulation for the maximum size of a home. It has to meet the setbacks, it has to meet the building lot coverage, and it has to meet the impervious surface. So they have to meet all these requirements to construct the home, and that's for all the structures on the property. So these homes could not have a shed later. They could not have any additional accessory structures later because the homes themselves are built out from what I believe they're at the maximum building lot coverage. So whatever the house is, that's the only structures that are permitted on there. In this
But even though you're permitting that, it feels like it comes out of the historical, what you're trying to achieve through historical district, which is
that's really
the
for
size of the structure, the shape of the structure. It looks like a huge, especially 4 when next to each other.
I think the reason why it feels bigger is because typically single family homes have accessory structures. So what
But they're
happens
typically
is
garages.
they'll have a garage, or they'll have a shed, or they'll have like another storage structure, or they'll have so it's not required, but it is. And I just want to point out that we had areas where when the city was originally platted, there are areas where there were 25-foot lots were platted. Over time, those lots have been historically used in combination. They were never legally combined. They just were used, and they got a property control number. And this is just some backup history so everybody kind of understood. So when the property appraiser came around and was assigning PCNs earlier, they didn't have a legal unity of title process for these lots that were historically used in combination. They just gave them a PCN and says, you own this property, we're taxing you, this is where your house is. So when somebody comes back and they have a vacant piece of property that had a historic plat that was never legally combined, just to give you the background, the process is that they can go to the property appraiser's office, get individual lots and come to the city. So there's this kind of the idea of getting back to the 25-foot lots, and I know this is over explaining, but they kind of can just go do that, right? There's not a lot that we can say against the subdivision back down to the 25-foot lots because that's how it was configured.
I don't have a problem with the lots because that's bringing it back to a historical kind of look, the 25-foot lots, better than having an apartment complex built there. What I have an issue with is how you can flow into the rest of the community. And in that particular block and also other blocks there, you see these small, they seem like they're a little higher because they're on concrete piers. These seem flat and low, and then if you're asking to put a flat roof, they even would look even flatter. But then you have this huge concrete to concrete, which is not the feeling that all of the rest of that historical district has.
Right.
That's the issue I have. And I'm wondering, and I know everything has to do with cost also, construction costs and all that, is maybe, yeah, you could have a streamlined modern house with a flat roof, but maybe make it 2-story. Would that be out of line with mango groves? And then
This is not the idea we have in mind there. I would say, I mean, look at the buildings next to us. I mean, we have this.
And that way you have more greenery, and maybe we could save the trees, but have it 2 stories, streamlined, and really, I agree with our staff that I don't like the what do you call it, the triangular look of it. It's streamlined, is flat roof. I lived in a streamlined house here in Lake Worth, and I did a lot of research. So it is different. It's supposed to be flat, but it would be a good idea, I think, and let me know if I'm out of line here, to do 2 stories on 25-foot lots, but have more greenery and maybe save some of the trees if you can. Maybe have one house further back, another one in the middle, another one further back, and another one way up front, saving the trees too, to allow some of that greenery to stay. And that would allow not only parking in the back, but also parking in the front as a driveway. So prevent people from parking all over the neighborhood.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate that feedback. We actually think, a 1-story home is more comfortable in that sense. And as soon as you add a stair to one of these, I just don't find them to be comfortable homes either. I would like to talk about
We're actually in board deliberation and discussion.
Yes, this is, you've had your time to discuss it.
Sorry.
This is discussion among board members now.
I didn't get that. My apologies.
Mr. Pickett, your comments, please.
I guess first to touch on the trees. There was a staff review, I assume, of their assessed for.
So there's not, we don't review trees. So this is part of what I was getting at with the plating and the thing. Single family home development is a by right development process, except in the historic district. So when you are looking at a single family home, you're really looking at the COA component of the single family home. So sometimes, like, for example, if they don't have their final landscape plan, we'll just review that at permit. So right now, their landscape plan as proposed, while it meets the minimum landscape requirements, would not meet our code. Because because there are so many existing trees, they're going to require a tree disposition plan, and then they're going to calculate the replacement value. So if the tree is in the location where a structure would be, there's a calculated value based on the tree's diameter. So the larger the tree, the more you have to replace basically an equal amount of that, or you have to pay basically a mitigation fee, which is, quite frankly, the bigger the tree, it's a substantial dollar amount. So most people choose to replace, that we've seen, have chosen to replace the trees and have filled out their landscaping. So I don't think that this is going to be the final look of the landscape plan from here, because they still have to do their disposition. So really the context here is, I think we can, if you're concerned about the trees for historic context, we can add a condition of approval to save as many trees as feasible, but I think really the scope of the COA is really the architecture and the appropriate context of the structure.
Okay, thank you. I have to put in my comments and
Wait. He has a little more.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I mean, otherwise, I echo the concerns as far as being able to get front to back and that type of thing, because it is very tight. But however, it meets the zoning regulations as far as setbacks and pervious area and that type of thing. And there is a market for this type of house. There's people that are downsizing older couples, older people just in general, or people that just don't want a two-story house. So I think that there is going to be a market for this type of house. I do like the idea that they've gone back to splitting up the lot and making the 25-foot lots. I think there's a market for that, and I think that it's very appropriate in this area. The only concern I have is actually the repetition of it, and having the same thing repeated 4 times in this one particular area. I think that because it is such a bold design, that it's just a little much to have that one thing 4 times. So I think that there's an opportunity there to break up the design, to have some little modifications here and there. It will still have a consistent theme, but it's not going to be the same thing built over and over again. You know, as far as it being a barracks or whatever, when you're walking on the street, you're seeing the barracks from an aerial view. Well, no one's going to be up there. People are walking down the street and they're going to see it from the street. So the biggest thing is seeing what the street view is going to be. And I think that's one of the biggest things we need to focus on, and that can be worked on.
Thank you. It appears to me that we are heading towards a continuance, and we hope that the architect and the applicants are taking notes. I would have to say that if I were the architect, I would have started with a planting plan showing the current tree locations and seeing how many I could save and how I could work that into the site plan. I agree with Mr. Harris that the entire site plan is suspect. I know you have different options. You could have done townhouses, you could have done apartments or whatever. You've chosen this. Your gable ends are high enough that you are getting close to being able to do a 2-story house. And I understand that's not what you want, but these take up the entire site. They leave no space for any of the amenities that we talk about. I really would hope that you would start from 0 and try something different. It truly is a barracks. If there is no other comments from board members, could I assume there will be a request for continuance? Would someone like to make a motion?
I would like to make one comment before we go on.
Sure.
I just want to thank the developer for the buildings that they're currently constructing on Lake. They're actually very beautiful buildings. And we don't want to just get discouraged. Just reapproach us again. You're going into the interior of the neighborhoods, and the historical issue is even more important when you leave this central downtown Lake Avenue and Lucerne. So we certainly appreciate your coming to Lake Worth Beach.
Well said.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, as part of your discussion point, would you like to give an advisement on perhaps having a small exterior storage access even on a portion of the house? Because there are people may need a lawnmower or some type of exterior storage. Sometimes I've seen them built in, they can be quite small.
I think they've heard that as one of the board's comments.
You mentioned that we're adding a shed. There's things that they're speaking about that we've already spoken about, correct? That we're going to cover, give an option to the buyer.
Yeah, it's a really in the jurisdiction of this board to talk about a shed. I mean, we want to do something that's appropriate for the neighborhood.
Okay, I think that we've covered everything we need to cover here, and we asked you all to go back, take our items into consideration. Do you have something more to say?
I was going to ask staff, if they were to come back and we table this, what would be the meeting date? Or should we even say that?
Well, I would just say, if we don't want to re-advertise, we need to have a date certain. So I would say let's continue it to next month. And if they're not ready, we can make another motion to continue it to a subsequent.
All right. I move to table HRPB project continue HRPB project number 2100100250 to our next month's meeting.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by someone,
Second one.
by Mr. Pickett.
Okay.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. Okay, we'll see you next month, or possibly if you want an extension to the November meeting. That'd be fine. Let's move on to, where are we? 320 North Lakeside.
Just give us 1 second.
Okay.
You're down.
Okay, well, I'll just go ahead and start. Again, for the record, Jordan Hodges. This is project number 21-001-00222, which is a consideration of a certificate of appropriateness for the construction of a 1,790 square foot addition for the single family residence at 320 North Lakeside Drive. Next slide. So this application is proposed by Per and Rachel Lawrenson, who are the property owners. As you can see on the location map, the property is located on the east side of North Lakeside Drive between 3rd Avenue North and 4th Avenue North. You can see it highlighted in red. It's a very large parcel with eastern frontage on the municipal golf course. The property is located in the SFR zoning district and again is currently used as a single family residence. Next slide. So documentation in the city's property file states that the building was constructed somewhere between 1925 and the 1930s. We don't have any original drawings of the building, but the property card on the screen is from 1943 and describes the structure of being a block construction with gable roofs, having a stucco exterior and plaster and wood interior walls. The building has a linear form with an irregular plan with varying roof heights over individual massing elements, partially enclosed colonnades, wood casement windows, and decorative grills, and simple exterior detailing typical for its period of construction. As you can see on the card right there on the front of the little diagram, by 1943, a garage was erected at the front of the building, which has since been converted into habitable living space and serves as the front entry point fronting North Lakeside Drive. Alterations over time include the installation of an asphalt shingle roof, window replacement, and various site alterations. Next slide. So we'll go through some photos, but the building does maintain a moderate to high degree of the 7 aspects of historic integrity. You can see the kind of staggered and layered design of the building, different roof lines. There's kind of a 2-story portion in the back and very low in the front. Next slide. There's another image. As you can see, there's currently kind of like a little motor court to the north of the property. You can see the vehicular gates there. The front portion of the property, you can see the front door and the 2 windows right there. That was the garage that was in place by 1943. Next slide. Again, that's to the on the north side of the property. Next slide. That's a view from the southeast corner, showing the pool and then kind of that 2-story massing element. Next slide. So this is the south elevation of the building in that southern kind of undeveloped portion of the lot. This is where the proposed addition would connect. Next slide. And that shows that kind of undeveloped southern portion of the lot. Next slide. So the proposed addition was reviewed as a conceptual plan at the May 12th HRPB meeting. These were the drawings that were presented. The applicants also mentioned their desire to utilize shipping containers as the method of construction.
Previous slide, babe, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Board members familiar with this type of construction did not believe it would be advantageous and asked the property owners to carefully consider that. In addition, the board requested that vertically oriented windows be utilized as they were the most appropriate architectural or for the architectural style. The applicants did go on to research the shipping container method and ultimately decided against doing that. So what they're proposing is going to be traditional construction. But the design of the addition has changed pretty substantively from the conceptual review to current plans, and we'll get into that in just a moment. Next slide. So this is current survey is the property. As you can see, it is a large parcel consisting of 2.5 platted lots of record, lots 5 and 6 in the south half of lot 7. But only the northern lot and lot and a half are developed. The entirety of lot 5 on the south end is empty. That's where the addition is proposed. Next slide. So we talk about base flood elevation a lot. Typically that is triggered when a substantial improvement is triggered. But the city's building official and floodplain administrator, Peter Ringel, utilized an independent appraisal provided by the applicants to determine the substantial improvement threshold. The independent appraisal assessed the depreciated value of the existing structure at $527,542. The applicants estimate that their cost of construction for this project will be below the $263,000 substantial improvement threshold. Therefore, the addition is allowed to be constructed at the current BFE of the existing structure or higher, depending on their needs, but it is not required to bring up to current code. Next slide. So this is the proposed site plan. You can see all of the existing in a simple outline with the existing driveway and pool and paver deck to the rear. The proposed 2-story addition and driveway on the unimproved south side of the parcel are the hatched portion. The addition is, as proposed, is consistent with all site data requirements in the city zoning code. The plan does exceed the minimum off-street parking requirements, but complies with all impermeable surface, building coverage allotment, floor area ratio, and required building setbacks. The connecting element, you'll see that kind of slender portion that connects the garage portion to the existing structure. That is set back roughly 47 feet from the front property line, with the front facade of the 2-story garage portion set back roughly 32 feet. Both massing elements are set back from the front facade of the existing structure, which is around 22 feet. Next slide. So these are the interior plans. The first floor connector, that slender portion again contains a staircase leading to the second floor habitable area, and the garage area contains a 2-car garage and a rear storage facility. The second floor features a large master bedroom, master bath, his and hers closets to the front of the building. The second floor also allows access onto a 2nd-story balcony, which is fronting the rear yard. Next slide. So the facade drawings of the addition, again, they were altered between conceptual review and the final drawings. The conceptual review drawings feature a 1-story massing connecting kind of that garage addition, and also utilized a flat roof with a parapet over the 2-story garage portion. The new design features a kind of a broad asymmetrical gable roof that utilizes a 1-story and a 2-story massing element that connects the primary bulk of the addition to the existing structure. The front facade of the addition utilizes 2 vertically oriented single-hung windows in the connecting element and 2 false recesses on the 2nd floor. Vertical slat shutters with shutter hardware are placed in those recesses to create the appearance of window openings. The remaining north, south, and east facades utilize vertically oriented single-hung encasement windows at regular intervals and generally avoid long expanses of blank facade. Next slide. Here is the building in a streetscape elevation. Staff does have some remaining concerns regarding the height discrepancy between the 2-story addition and the low 1-story front facade of the building. The mean garage height is roughly, it's about 20 feet 3 inches. The property owners and the project architect have sought to mitigate that transition by extending the sloped roof over the connecting massing element and by setting the addition back from the front facade of the residence. Additionally, the design utilizes a 2-bay 16-foot wide garage door which is atypical for Mediterranean revival structures of the period that featured integral car garages. Original garage bays that remain on the city's early Mediterranean and Mission Revival buildings are typically around 9 feet in width. The board has generally not approved the 2-car wide garage bays, so staff has included a condition of approval that the garage utilize 2 garage doors in place of the single 16-foot wide door. But the applicants addressed their desire for the single garage opening in their justification statement, and I believe we'll speak on that a little bit if you have any questions. Next slide. For conclusion, it is the analysis of staff that the addition is generally consistent with the preservation ordinance and the design guidelines. Again, staff recommends that the board discuss the transition in height between the existing residence and the addition and the utilization of the 16-foot wide garage door to determine the overall compatibility of the proposed addition. Rachel and Per Lawrenson are here with us this evening. They're the property owners. I'm sure they'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hodges. Do the applicants have some additional comments to make?
This is Per Lawrenson. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and board members. And I would like to express, first off, I'd like to express our gratitude for Jordan and Abraham's guidance and assistance in moving this to a point where I think we've accomplished our goals within the constraints and requirements and objectives of the various HRPB and FEMA and statutory and our own site and program constraints. I appreciate the issues that Jordan touched on regarding the doors, garage door, and also the connector between the 2-story building and addition and the existing house. The garage door is a little problematical because we have the addition has to be where it is in order to avoid some existing mature palm trees that we do not want to get rid of, that are hard on the north side of the corner of the addition, and then we're hoping that the driveway can avoid a manhole that is on the street, basically in line with the south edge of the driveway if you come out straight from the garage. The issue, an issue with going with, well, I appreciate that 2 single bay garages would look, it would look better. I would say it will look better, but a problem that we have is that if you go to 2 single bay garages of say 9 feet each, and you put, let's say, a minimum of a foot in between those 2 bays, and we're constrained to basically the 22-foot exterior width to this structure, you're left with only 3 feet on either side of the 2 bays. And that's 3 feet on the exterior. If you then take away the width of the walls, on the inside, you are essentially the vehicles will be hard up against very close to the exterior walls in the garage, and that basically precludes any opportunity for having cabinets or counters, benches on the in the garage for storing things above. Well, frankly, the very likely flooding, increasingly likely flooding in that area. We are at 4.5 foot elevation there. That's a loss of a foot since the original house was built. I'm sure it's at least a foot. It's been lost, and flooding is only getting more and more likely in the 21st century. So we are a major reason for the design and building this is to create living space and storage that is relatively safe from flooding. And so loss of storage on the walls in the garage is unfortunate. Anyway, that's a comment on the garage doors.
Wait a minute. What about the?
This is my wife, Rachel.
What about the historic guidelines that if it becomes cumbersome to comply with historic guidelines in the contemporary world, that there might be an exception made. And when you look at the front elevation along the street, the wide gate that already exists is kind of balancing and complementing the single garage door. And we are next door, literally, to the neighboring house that also has a double garage door. So it's not, I don't think it's a jarring, it's not jarring, put it that way, but it's difficult as cars get bigger and bigger to not, hit the post in the middle as you're entering and exiting.
Okay, thank you very much.
Could I make just one more comment about the connector and the two-story? I think that would be helpful. So the only reason for the connector having a portion of it being more than a single story is that we could not get the stairs into the existing or the proposed two-story structure, because on the first floor it's primarily taken, or the ground floor, let's call it, because it's really not living space. It's the ground floor is primarily garage, and the stairs would impinge on that garage. On the second floor, the living space, it just pushing the stairs up through that, really interfered with a reasonable program for that floor. And that's why we had to essentially incorporate it on the outside of the two-story structure.
Thank you very much. Very good explanation. And let's ask if board members have any questions. Leave it open. Who wants to start?
I have a question.
All right.
With respect to the garage door, why can't they have one single door and just keep the arch?
Well, if you look at the city's collection, the city does have several commissioned Mediterranean revival buildings from the 1920s, early 30s that featured integral car garage bays. They're just generally always 9 to 10 feet wide. They didn't really utilize garage bays that were wide at that point. So if there were going to be two side by side, there was that connecting pillar to them. So that's why, as it is now, it's featured as two doors that swing out. If you're going to do a single wide garage door, that would be the way to do it, would be to make it kind of look like a carriage door that opens out. If you were going to approve a 16-foot wide door. Otherwise, and how we've generally approved them in the past is 8 to 9 foot wide doors, separate doors.
Now, being in a historical district, it has to swing the same way, or can it just open up and look like if it was?
Well, that's what this is. Yeah, it's an overhead door that looks like it swings out.
Okay, and the historical guidelines require that it does swing out?
No, it doesn't require that. So what we look at is the design and scale of an opening. And so typically our openings would be 8, 9, 10 feet wide. it would either have an overhead door or those would swing out. This is a 16-foot wide opening that is designed, which is it's atypical. We don't see that configuration historically.
Chip Guthrie, do you have questions?
I just, sitting here and looking at the streetscape that we are looking at, 2 points that I believe Ms. Lawrenston put out there was that we are right next door to another property of the same height and massing with an existing double single garage door. I do think that the arch on the proposed garage door does complement the gate over to the left in the same style with the arch on it. If they can make that if that 16-foot opening is not going to be an issue with having it be an overhead door and it's just looking as though it's 2 swing doors, I would have no problem with that. And I don't see, I don't really have a problem with the attaching structure either. I kind of wish it could be, you know, I don't know, maybe maybe a little taller or something like that, but I understand their reasoning behind it. Yeah, so I mean, that could be, they can incorporate that somehow, but I really don't have an issue with it because the house is expansive. It is of varying styles throughout the whole property, and so this I think would actually, you know, kind of go along with what they have there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Harris?
I had the opportunity to walk through the original house a number of years ago, and it was for sale. I know it's gone through a few previous ownerships before you got it. And I was always taken by the fact that the house had this kind of rambling quality to it. Not to mention the fact that it's an unbelievably beautifully built house.
It's an awesome house.
I mean, it's an incredible building. And I have to say, this elevation to me does nothing for that house. It's very blank. I'd like to make a couple of suggestions that perhaps you could pass on to your designer. But if you look at the plan, the way the plan is laid out for the second story, all the storage space in this house is placed on the prime exterior portion of the building. There are 2 fairly large walk-in closets that take up all the exterior wall. And then as a result of that, there are 2 fake window openings above the garage door. Why not just move the bathroom to the exterior side so you can get some natural light into your bathroom and then put the walk-in closets in the middle? I mean, it's almost, you can almost just do a mirror image of it. So that's one suggestion. The other suggestion I have has to do with the way this connector works. There's no reason why you need to continue that roof line down like that. You could make the, let me get my computer to work here. You could make that, you can get rid of that big extension of the roof line, which isn't really helping the building at all from the street, and just make that maybe a fairly tall but narrow gable that's turned in the opposite direction of that massive gable that faces the street. I think that would help it a ton, and it wouldn't have to be that tall necessarily. I don't have obviously the stair drawings in front of me, and I know they're headroom issues. But having said that, I think the designer could make that a little more gentle in the way it connects the building, because right now it only contributes to this massive scale of this huge box facing North Lakeside. And I think if he were to, or she were to look at this in maybe a slightly different way, a less simplistic way, I think it could really improve it. But right now, I'm so, I don't know. I mean, what Chip was saying about the house next door is right. You know, it's just because that garage is tall doesn't mean that this elevation has to mimic that one. Right. So anyhow, that's my comment.
Okay. Mr. Pickett?
Yeah, I'm not as concerned about the garage doors, and because of the way that the style that they are. I do agree that they play off the gates. I think that's a nice effect. I do also agree with trying to do something with the connector. That kind of adds a lot to the massing of it, but I'm not that concerned with the fact that it's a two-story house or the massing of it, because there are several other two-story houses in the neighborhood, and so it's out of place. But I do agree that there could be a little bit more work done on the connector to think of how much massing there is there.
Thank you. Ms. Fox?
Is this garage the same height as I can't tell, the one next door to it? I mean, we're not going up and down, up and down. I mean, they seem to be the same height there. I don't seem to have a problem with it.
Yeah. Who did I miss?
Okay.
Okay.
I mean, may I say one other thing, just looking at this, and again, I'm just trying to figure out a way where you can mitigate this massive elevation. But why not turn the gable on this thing 90 degrees? Why not have the gable coming down toward the street and rising to a ridge behind it? So you don't get the massive size of the ridge right in your face as you're looking at it. It just seems like there are lots of ways that you could deal with this.
I agree with you on the turning the gable to the opposite direction. The original sketches that the owners did had a pent roof over the garage. The garage was forward, and that did a nice job of mitigating the height. I'm wondering if there's a way that we could improve it, but as for the roof to be turned 90 degrees and the connector to be lowered and also turned to match the roof. Does the owner have thoughts on that?
Can I respond?
This is my wife, Rachel.
We just can't imagine how many times we went back and forth on how we could fit stairs and make it so that you didn't hit your head and that you weren't in the garage with the stairs. We want the front of the house, which is only one story, to read very, very clearly as the front of the house. I think it's really important that the garage be set back. It's just a personal opinion. I think it's unfortunate when garages have any sort of prominence on the front. And since we do have 2.5 lots, we were trying to keep the garage a little further back, but we also have to deal with where exactly we join with the house. There's only a very specific place that we can join with the house. And in fact, the sketch maybe doesn't do it justice, but in front of that joiner, the other reason for how wide the connector is there's a whole stand of trees, which might even sort of mitigate that height. But the height was partially due to being able to just get your head through on a second story level from the stairs. Initially, we had a different roof line, and Jordan maybe can look through some of the things that were sent to him earlier on, and it looked even bigger. And the reason for the roof descending in that way was it took away from being so tall next to the structure. I hear what you're saying about the roof. I don't know what implications there would be, but we're also pretty constrained to not go over the 50% value of the house. So there are a lot of moving parts here in terms of getting up to the second floor and not having it look too big, and dealing with our existing planting and where we join the house, and having the garage not too close to the street so that the front of the house, which is only one story, have prominence.
Right, I understand that. I'm just saying, if you look at the if you look at the drawings that were presented, the proposed north elevation, which is actually a section through the stairway, not to rise and run, but at least through the space. And then the proposed west side elevation is there. You can see, I mean, I can just see that just by looking at this, that the house on the north elevation is narrower than the house on the west side elevation. And well, I take that.
Can you say that again?
I take that back. But what I'm getting at is that if the gable were turned so that the slope were running essentially from the west to the east, you know, the gable is in the middle of that proposed north elevation.
Mm-hmm.
It would reduce the mass of the house tremendously, and it would not impair that stairway at all, the way this connector is drawn right now. It would just mean that the roof doesn't run all the way down the way it does currently.
I would go a little bit further and say, you know, it does not need to be an equal gable end. You could drop it down to 7 feet in the closet area and have the gable off-centered, and you could get a 9-foot ceiling in the bedroom if you wanted.
Right.
I notice you've got it down to 8 feet in the garage and 8 foot in the master bedroom. You could actually gain a little height in the master bedroom and have the west side come down to a 7-foot height, reducing the apparent bulk of that addition. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Well, I think our architect maybe is listening, but I'm concerned about the cost when you start making roof lines.
Oops, that's not their architect.
That's Judy, you didn't tell us you were involved in this.
Doing it on the side now.
Did we just lose
I
them?
think we lost the connection.
Box architectural.
Does this look like something that wants to be continued, or do we want to approve with changes?
What's the, I asked them.
Yeah.
They should have their architect online.
Is our architect here? He
Is,
was here.
Is Lou Canales signed on? He was.
Please unmute.
Well,
Yep, I'm here.
Okay.
I'm here. Hey, guys.
Hello.
Okay.
Hey,
No,
Lou,
I was listening. I was listening.
you have heard that there is discussion of potentially turning the ridge line to be north-south, possibly making an uneven ridge line and being able to reduce the apparent mass from the street side. I don't see that would change the cost by any particular amount. So do you have a problem with that? And is it something that you?
So you're saying having two gable ends facing west, basically, right? That's what you're saying?
No.
Right?
We're thinking about having the gable turned so it's
Facing north.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Oh, facing north. Yeah, I think we tried that once, right, guys? Apart. I think we tried that.
I don't believe we did actually look at that because of the layout of this addition being primarily east-west. So we kept the gable end was on the west and east.
Yeah, I'm sure we can try that to lower, and we could probably lower it some, like they were saying, just to where the headroom is, walking up to the second level. We can lower that some too to lower the masses. And another way we can lower it, someone was telling Par, is we don't have to go with 24-inch floor joists. We can maybe go to 16-inch or even lower floor joists by going with other types of floor systems to lower even more. So there's other ways we can lower the whole building height too. You know, there's other ways too we can do it. You know.
That sounds good. If you can reduce the floor structure a bit and play with changing the height. How much time do you think you need to make those changes?
Not very much. I can, a day or so.
Can we get you back here next month?
Oh, sure.
Oh, that's right. In 2 weeks or?
If you would like him to come back with a conceptual drawing and you want to see it, we're not going to have time to review the staff report. The packet is out. But if you want to come back and maybe under a board discussion item, look at where they've got to this before they do their final plans and give them guidance, we can continue the item until next week for guidance on that particular revision. But other than that, they need to come back the next month for staff comments on any revisions, like a revised staff report.
Okay.
Does that make sense? It would be up to you what you wanted to give. If you want to throw something together and you want to be like, yeah, this is it, I feel it.
So the two options you have are just coming back in a month with drawings and assuming that they would be acceptable, that would be approved at that time. Or you could come back, we are having another meeting 1 week from tonight. If you feel like coming back with conceptual sketches, it might make it easier for you when you come back in a month.
Yeah, we can come back next week, right, Per?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
That would be an informal review.
Right, it would just have to be under board member comments at the end because it's not an agenda item and you all would have to continue this to next week to discuss it as, well, I guess we would continue it so it would be an agenda item. Yeah. So we could just talk about it.
So next week, you wouldn't have to actually log on until about this time.
Okay.
All right.
All right. So can I get a motion to continue this?
Yes, I move to continue. I move to continue HRPB project number 21-001-00222 to a design review the following week, which would be September 15th, is that right?
Yes, 15th.
And then you would, and then the formal discussion of the item would come back for your October.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, I hear a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Dorinzo. All in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Excellent. Good project.
Thank you, guys.
Last project of the evening is 617 North K Street.
Good evening. Again, for the record, I'm Abraham Fogel, Preservation Planner for the City of Lake Worth Beach. I will be presenting item C, which is the consideration of a COA for the construction of a new plus or minus 1,462 square foot single family structure and a plus or minus 650 square foot accessory structure at 617 North K Street. The applicant, Pamela Russell, on behalf of the property owner, is requesting approval, again, for the construction of a new single-family structure and accessory structure. The subject property is 37.5 feet by 135 feet, and it contains a lot and a half, platted lot of record, located on the west side of North K Street between 6th Avenue North and 7th Avenue North in Lake Worth Beach. The property is currently vacant and is located in the single-family, two-family zoning district. A single-story, single-family residence was constructed on this property circa 1925 in a wood frame vernacular architectural style. Although no architectural drawings of the building are available, property cards from the 1940s and 50s describe the structure as being a wood frame construction on a pier foundation, having a gable composition and roll roof, wood windows, and a porch. The property owner requested that the city's building official inspect the property to determine if there were unsafe conditions that would warrant condemnation. On March 3rd, 2021, the city's building official, Peter Ringel, declared the structure as unsafe due to decay, deterioration, or dilapidation, as it was likely to fully or partially collapse. That condemnation letter is provided on this slide, along with the inspection photos. And pursuant to LDR section 23.5-4M3, a COA is not required for the demolition of a contributing building that has been condemned by the city. The demolition of the structure was subsequently approved with building permit 21-893. Here we have some photos of the current lot as it sits today. It's largely vacant with the exception of fencing and vegetation. And here we have another angle that shows the lot today. So moving on to our proposed site plan, we see the main residence at the front, the garage at the rear, and site features include a front walkway, rear driveway, fencing, and landscaping. For our zoning analysis, the proposed new construction is consistent with all site data requirements in the zoning code. It meets minimum off-street parking requirements and complies with all impermeable surface requirements, building lot coverage, and required building setbacks. It should be noted that the property is a non-conforming lot of record in regards to the minimum lot width for the SFTF zoning district. As you can see in the chart, the minimum width is 50 feet and the lot is 37 feet 6 inches. Pursuant to LDR section 23.5-3C regarding non-conforming lots of record, in any zoning district in which single-family dwelling units are permitted, a single-family dwelling unit and a customary accessory building may be erected on any single non-conforming lot of record that was platted on or before January 5, 1976. Since the subject property was platted before this date, single-family development is permitted with a customary accessory building. A landscape plan was also provided with this application. It will be reviewed at permitting to ensure compliance with the city's landscape requirements. Moving on to the elevations, the front facade of the new residence features a front porch with decorative railings, posts, and beams that lead to a pair of French doors with decorative light patterns. The front doors are flanked by pairs of single hung windows with decorative light patterns as well. The structure is designed utilizing concrete block construction, finished with stucco to simulate woodlap siding on the exterior walls. As you can see on these elevation drawings, a hip roof design is proposed. The applicant indicated in the application that dimensional asphalt shingles were utilized. However, the elevations do show a metal roof with no finish. The applicant can clarify she would like both to be considered tonight. The fenestration incorporates single hung windows with historically compatible window trim, sill, and mullion details. This request also includes a detached garage with the same detailing and exterior finishes as the new residence. A side-loaded porch is proposed on the east elevation of the structure. Recessed panel garage doors are proposed for the vehicular and boat base. Accessory structures such as garages are typically secondary and subordinate to residences in the city's historic districts. However, we do have several examples of accessory dwelling units and garage apartments that are 2 stories in height as compared to a 1-story residence. The proposed garage has a typical wall height for a single-story structure because it will accommodate a boat. However, it's been designed to not exceed the ridge height of the residence, which helps mitigate its appearance as visible from the street. The LDRs have regulation that limit wall heights at side setbacks and help safeguard against high continuous walls. Staff has included a condition of approval that this garage will comply with that requirement since it's designed very close to that maximum. Here we have the floor plan coming from that front walkway. We have the porch, an open living, dining, and kitchen. Down a hallway on each side, you can access bedrooms and bathrooms and laundry facilities, and that rear accessory structure has again those bays for car and for a boat and a integral porch. The applicant has provided a streetscape elevation. These are primarily used to ensure that the scale, height, and massing, architectural detailing of the proposed structure are contextually appropriate and compatible with the neighborhood and abutting properties. The proposed building is consistent with the height and width of other single-story buildings and is in harmony with the historic properties in the district. All new construction within a designated historic district shall be visually compatible. In approving or denying certificates of appropriateness for new construction, the board shall consider the visual compatibility criteria provided in LDR section 23.5-4 K3A. Responses to this criteria were provided in your staff report. It is staff's analysis that the building is consistent with the height of other single-story buildings surrounding the property. Each facade features a rhythm of solids to voids with windows and door openings that avoid long, unbroken walls, with the exception of the north elevation. The proposal includes a faux shuttered opening on the north elevation of the residence. However, the north elevation of the garage lacks fenestration. Staff has included a condition of approval that additional windows or faux openings are added. Going back here, that would be the bottom right, is the north elevation that I mentioned does not have any fenestration. And to conclude here, the building, as I mentioned earlier, will utilize simulated stucco to simulate wood lap siding. This is a common and compatible facade material for new construction proposals in our historic districts. Overall, the size, massing, and other visual qualities of the proposed new construction are compatible and in harmony with visually related properties. Moving on to our design guidelines compliance. This proposal adheres to the design features of wood frame vernacular structures. This architectural style in our design guidelines is described as being built by local craftsmen using locally available materials, and were built to take advantage or to protect from the specific environment in which they were built. Ultimately, this meant the buildings were utilitarian in nature and had very little ornamentation or detailing other than those elements that had an actual use. It is our analysis that the proposed design utilizes regularized window sizes, appropriate material usage, and has a balanced layout. The structure as designed utilizes elements of wood frame vernacular architecture commonly found in early 20th century residential structures in Lake Worth Beach. In conclusion, the proposed application is consistent with the city's land development regulations as conditioned, and the structure's design and site plan are generally consistent with the wood frame vernacular architectural style and the historic preservation design guidelines requirements on site considerations. Therefore, staff recommends approval with conditions. That concludes staff's presentation. The applicant is with us tonight.
Thank you very much. Does the applicant have any additional comments to make?
Yes, I'm not sure if can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, but thank you for seeing our project tonight. We appreciate all that you guys do. We feel like this is a great project, and we're excited about building this house in Lake Worth. We've been a part of the community for the past 20 years and are looking forward to making this addition to our home. I did want to only point out one thing. I think that Abraham and Jordan have done a great job in helping us kind of guide us through this process. On the accessory building and the resident building, the right view, in the back of the residence, we have a faux we have the option of a faux window there. The reason we did not put a real window there was because if you look on the street view, you'll know that on that side of the house is a apartment building. And because that particular location of that faux window is the master bedroom, we were trying to kind of mitigate people from being able to look or to see down into that bedroom. And so that was the reason why we very purposefully did not put a window there, but we are open to having a faux window or whatever the recommendations are for that. But I just kind of wanted to explain that we were hoping to kind of hide the view of the apartment building with the boat garage and so on, that might help sort of camouflage that building for us. So that was kind of our thought process on that. But otherwise, I think the house speaks for itself, and I'm anxious to hear your comments.
Thank you very much. Let's go on. We have no comments from the public, I presume.
No, sir, we do not. We do not, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Who wants to start? Mr. Dorinza.
I like it. And I think having the boat garage is very interesting and unique. And a blank wall in a garage off an alleyway really doesn't bother me, especially if it's next to an apartment building.
Mm-hmm.
Putting a faux window there, fine, if the owner's in agreement to that. But I don't think it's something you're actually going to see from the street.
Okay. Judy Fox.
No, I like the boat garage. It's cute.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Godfrey.
Well, I agree that there needs to be something, fenestration on the side of the boat garage. Now, the applicant, Ms. Russell, did state that they wanted a faux window toward the master bedroom area. I don't have a problem with that, but that is a wide expanse of blank wall on the garage side that even if they used faux windows there for security reasons, they don't want somebody looking in to see a boat or whatever. But it does appear to be a very, very large expanse of blank space. And the same thing with over on the master, if they want it for security reasons, to make it faux instead of a real working window. I think it could improve the side look of the property. I mean, I'm a boat person. When I look at a structure that is built for one particular purpose, for one particular family, I just tend to look 10, 20 years down the road and see what is this going to be used for with the next family that moves in. And so I have a little concern about that, but you know, this is what the owner wants for their property, and they want to put their boat in it. And maybe they'll have another boat after this boat and another one after that. Or yeah, maybe they'll switch over to an RV. So, but it's an interesting style. It's a fairly small lot. But that wide expanse is the only concern that I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Martin.
I'm fine with the project presentation. It looks very nice. To me, the concern is mostly the front. The sides really, where the garage doesn't really, that can be hidden by landscaping. So I'm fine with it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Mr. Harris.
As usual, I don't mind blank walls. And for certain areas, they're essentially, they don't need windows. You know, it's a garage. I agree with Mr. Martin. I don't see any reason to worry about putting a window there. I think landscape would be fine. One thing that I'm only bringing this up because I recently had a similar experience with an area where the owner wanted to park a boat, and it wasn't a garage, it was just outside. Is this house for the person we were just talking to or is she representing the owners of this?
No, the owner is my husband.
Oh,
This is our home, yeah.
Okay, all right, great. Well, what I was gonna say is, you might want to really make sure that you have the arc of the trailer swing worked out, because this could be a real issue for you. You know, you get it built and then you can't back the trailer in, or even pull it out without kind of doing a bunch of maneuvers, because this is going into an alley, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, so I'm only bringing that up as just purely functional. It has nothing to do with approval. But I'm just saying that you may want to check that. The arc of your trailer, it requires to make the turn. So, you know, knock out the wall.
Could you make that tall door a double tall? Do they make the, I mean, I know nothing.
Well, it's not the height, it's
the angle.
Actual radius to get the boat in and out.
So it wouldn't matter if it was wider. It's all with the alley. I'm trying to.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Well, and that's a very good comment, and trust me, it's one that my husband has been focused on.
Okay.
And he has been looking at that, and we have the garage is set back from the alley, and I think is going to give us enough of an angle to get the boat in. It's not that big a boat.
And Jeff, to your point, the code requires that if you have parking on an alley or a right of way,
Right, you need the 10 feet.
you need at least the 10 feet because you need,
Right, no.
you need the full length, you need the 20 feet for the back out.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I see the 10 feet for the drive. I'm assuming that's 10
And
feet.
they actually have 13.5 feet.
Right, all I'm saying is that
I need to check.
I've had a situation just like this, and the boat was completely out in the open. I mean, we weren't trying to back it into anything, and it was tricky. So,
Mr. Pickett.
No, I echo the rest of the board. I like the project. I think it's going to be a great addition to the neighborhood. I don't have a problem with the blank space in the garage. It's a garage wall, and it's understood that it's a garage wall, and
Down the park next to it.
Doesn't need a window.
Okay. All right, my comments. It appears that a straw vote would be that there's no need for a window, real or faux, in the garage. I could be wrong on that, but I suspect so. I have a couple of just little issues. Why are there 5-foot side yard lines on the plan drawing? I don't know that was a legal requirement. Did anybody else pick up on that?
What was that?
The plan drawing shows 5-foot side yard lines, which don't relate to code as far as I can tell.
I don't know.
There you mean.
Okay. Another tiny little item. You have a skirt board that seems to end short of the rear of the house in your elevations. I assume that was just a typo.
I think that, that's just that's a boo-boo.
Okay. You don't have the AC compressor shown. That's something you're going to want to at some point. Next item is, do you have any interest in exposing the rafter tails? It's just a thought. If you wanted to, I would certainly like it, but that's up to you.
Okay.
And this Tyree House Plan Company, will they provide the actual working drawings or are they finished now?
No, we did not want to do construction documents until we knew that this was approved. And Tyree will not provide the construction documents. A local company will do that.
Okay. The reason I ask is the detailing that they're showing, the window trim and so on, is excellent. I love it. Very well done. And I just hope that we don't lose that when we get into working drawings.
Well, this is what's approved.
Yeah, so this is what's approved. We will expect the final thing to have the same detailing. And also a little thing is, if I'm reading it right, the window leaves appear to be a different color from the trim, which I think is a wonderful idea. We've talked about it before. So if you decided to do that, I would certainly approve. That's the end of my comments.
Mr. Chairman.
Can I ask one thing real quickly?
Yes.
In the presentation from staff, they said that we would be discussing the difference between a metal roof that's depicted and a shingle roof. Can I get the owner's take on that, please?
We actually were thinking of asphalt shingles. And to be honest with you, I think the metal look on this was just a miscommunication. But we were thinking asphalt shingles, although we are open. If you prefer the metal, then that's fine too. But we were thinking of asphalt.
Okay, I think probably the board was thinking about asphalt too.
Okay, we're totally good with that.
Mm-hmm. Do we need to go through the conditions of approval or are you okay with them?
Ms. Russell.
Number 13 is still that staff recommendation. That's not a condition, it's just a recommendation. So you can either strike it or leave it. We won't enforce that as just a recommendation.
Okay, and the rear driveway will be extended 10 feet.
Where are you?
Well, they're at 13.
They're 13.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I think you were talking about the strip driveway needs to be a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Oh, well, it states it right there.
And just go back, Mr. Chairman, when you talked about a little bit about the mechanical equipment and the setback is for new construction, mechanical equipment cannot be located in the setback. So they're going to need to, when you're doing your construction drawings, you're going to need to locate your mechanical equipment on the side with a larger setback, because your required setback is 3.75 feet from the property line. So your mechanical equipment cannot be in that setback.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, are we at the point of a motion?
I move to approve HRPB project number 21-001-00182. Staff recommended conditions for a certificate of appropriateness for a new construction of a plus 1462 square foot single family structure and a plus 650 square foot accessory structure at 617 North K Street, based upon competent substantial evidence in the staff report and pursuant to the City of Lake Worth Beach land development regulations and historic preservation requirements.
Second by whom? By Mr. Pickett. Motion made and seconded by Mr. Pickett. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Wonderful. Folks, we're into planning issues, public comments, which I see none, and department reports.
We have no department reports.
Okay.
You'll get your packet next one.
Wow. Wonderful.
Wow. So you're going home to do it now. Just checking, George.
We actually didn't want to send it to you tonight, just in case.
Overwhelming, yeah.
I have a quick board member comment that I'd like to make. And that goes back not specifically to a project we saw tonight, but we're getting a lot of pool cabanas that we know are probably going to be wanted to be used as accessory dwelling. Sometime in the future, I suspect that Lake Worth Beach will pass some kind of an accessory dwelling regulation, perhaps similar to Minneapolis or I think Los Angeles now. So it might be worthwhile to think about those changes. Should we allow those changes on a 25-foot lot or not? Should we worry about parking? And just to keep in mind that one of these days it will probably come, the end of single family zoning. That's my only comment.
We could have music.
So I will say that to allow for the legal conversion of those units would require parking and additional parking space.
Right.
You know, if people choose to do things that are illegal, sometimes people choose to do that. If they're caught, they're given a code enforcement violation, and then that can make things sticky for them. it is difficult to catch, but we do monitor it. And we also have, just so you're aware, we have building inspectors out on the weekends now. And we have caught, we're catching a lot less people doing illegal construction work on the weekends, because now I guess word has gotten out that every Saturday and Sunday, there is a building inspector patrolling the city. It used to be just a free-for-all in the city. So some of those things are slowing down a little bit, but.
Wonderful. Any other board member comments? Hearing none, how about a motion for adjournment?